There will be spoilers ahead. Lots of spoilers, so be careful, won't you? Down in the border town they call San Robles, there is a car that goes suddenly boom. In comes the DA, his name it is Vargas, and Detective Quinlan, who's like a balloon.
But what?
Vargas, he sends his wife off to a motel, hoping that somehow she's out of harm's way. Meanwhile, the evidence, it's being planted, so Quinlan can make that evil man pay.
Hang on. What?
But this poor man, he is part of a frame-up. Only this Vargas can prove it's not so. With Zsa Zsa and Marlene and Janet and Charleton, this looks to be one big ponderous show.
What are you doing?
Roundabout now, I think Max wants to kill me, throttle me, stab me, and bury me deep. I think I'd better stop singing this recap, or I will enjoy me a permanent sleep. Sleep. Yes.
What was that?
Touch of Evil, the musical, right here on Max Mike Movies. The series,
Lord.
Monochrome. The movie, Touch of Evil. This is a very vaunted motion picture. Which our little musical tribute,
Sure.
I should say, this is entirely my fault. This
I had nothing to do with this.
This is a very vaunted motion picture, one of Orson Welles' best known. Thing is, does it stand the test of time? Is it a particularly good use of black and white filming? And are we really supposed to believe that's getting ahead of ourselves? This week, standing in for Max Two-Tone Levine, we have that badger of justice, Max Two-Tone Levine. Say surprise, Max!
No, you don't deserve it after that song. I'm not doing anything for you.
I sweated and toiled over that song. Took me at least 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm the guy with fingerprints all over my neck, that shirt collar of the streets, Mike Luce, and no, that makes no sense at all. But
It does not.
the important question is, does this movie make sense? And we'll get to that question right after we get to this question. Poll question. We were dying to know what movies, supposedly for children, should probably not be shown to children, at least if they're children you actually like. Here's a list compiled by you. Up north, Vince gives us his take. Quote, some might say Willy Wonka shouldn't be shown to kids you like because he does sort of candy murder a bunch of kids that he,
I like that
he
phrase.
invited to his factory in the first place. I love that phrase, candy murder. But I used to read Edward Gorey's The Beastly Baby to a 5-year-old at bedtime, so I am not the best to ask. There is a Quebec Christmas classic, La Guerre de Tuque, The Dog Who Stopped the War, 1984, that I detest with the heat of a supernova. A bunch of kids have funny adventures building a snow fort and having a war, don't have a war, filled with cliches and horrible music and sound effects, which ends with them killing an innocent dog by crushing and suffocating it when they destroy the fort.
Oh.
They bury the body in a barn, and the credits roll showing us clips of all the fun we just saw. Happy holidays, kids. Chalice. Oops, that's a swear word. You might not want to say it. End quote.
Oh, oops. Sorry, France and
Wow.
parts of Canada. By the way, I have decided Candy Murder is now my new drag name.
I thought it was going to be your Who cover band name. But Candy Murder. All right. That sounds like a whole lot of holiday fun. Thank you, Vince.
Yeah.
Candy Murder. A.J. Sheems offered up, quote, Babes in Toyland, 1986. Richard Mulligan's character scared the hell out of me as a kid, end quote.
It's a confusing movie, too.
I only vaguely remember the earlier version and that one without the fear. But thanks, A.J. Benjamin Javi Carl's choice was Return to Oz. Yeah, maybe not for kids, but I really like that movie. Thanks, Javi. Agatha Gasparoni votes for The Secret of Nim. Yeah, that one has animal experimentation as a central plot point, doesn't it? Thanks, Agatha.
Also, the so-called good guy, Nicodemus, is terrifying.
Yeah.
Never mind the owl.
Nick Hoffman said, quote, the standard has always been Bambi, end quote. Yeah, there's that one scene. Bambi's mom! Thanks, Nick. Chrissy Becker's choice was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I had to ask her if it was the child catcher's fault. She replied, yep, it's a child holocaust. The kids had to hide under the floorboards. I was scarred, end quote. Well, there you go. Thanks, Chrissy. And remember, treacle tarts are all free today. Jamie Kleinert's vote was for Black Cauldron, though Matt Reisman admits it was one of his childhood favorites. Say our entire episode on the Black Cauldron. Thanks, Jamie. Mike Weasel Dans posted, quote, I think E.T. is intended to be a family film, but holy blank did it scar me for a very long time when I was a kid, end quote. One man's Reese's Pieces is another man's nightmare. Thanks, Wheeze. Aaron Perez's choice was Peter Pan. No idea why, but Benjamin Carl jumped in to offer some insight. Quote, I just rewatched Peter Pan for the first time in decades and was astonished when Captain Hook full-on murdered one of his crew in cold blood for playing the accordion, end quote. Wow,
well, it's a pretty good reason.
I forgot that part. Thanks, Packy and Javi. Dr. Rebecca Pelkey sent us, quote, there were parts of the animated Lord of the Rings films from 1978-80 that scared the bejesus out of me. And Watership Down, though I loved and still do the book, end quote. Yeah, that rabbit fight.
Yeah.
Well, where there's a whip, there's a way. Thanks, Becca. Regan McStravick's vote comes from the small screen. Quote, not a movie, but the whole H.R. Puffin stuff show scared the crap out of me as a kid. And
really?
Not specifically Witchy Poo. I actually barely even remember the character. But for some reason, I just found the anthropomorphized hats to be creepy as hell. And I had to suffer through it because I because I liked the cartoons and shows that went with it. Land of the Lost, Sigmund the Sea Monster, so on and so forth. Somehow, I didn't find those scary at all, so go figure. And end quote. Yeah, weird indeed. I think Max's protest there was, as mine was going to be, that I think you're remembering Lidsville, although I can see how H.R. Puffin stuff is a gateway drug to Lidsville. And their trauma is connected. But
the Sid and Marty Krofft-diverse.
Yeah, but if you do remember correctly, as we do, it is the kookiest. So thanks, Regan.
And the kickiest.
Matt Reisman's back with, quote, Roger Rabbit, possibly. Both kind of risque, and Christopher Lloyd's character is terrifying, end quote.
I got to say, the scene where he kills the shoe, I never thought that was for children.
Well, I never thought of Roger Rabbit as a kid's movie, but I can totally see why it would be thought of that way. And, Lloyd is kind of horrifying in that film, especially when his voice gets real high. But thanks, Matt. Val Coons, who is a listener and has no jokes associated with her, stated, quote, I'm surprised I haven't seen Dark Crystal in here yet. Wonderful movie, but a lot darker than the average kid could or should see. I'd say Bambi and The Lion King, too. 5-year-olds really don't need to see death, end quote. But Disney is famous for throwing characters off buildings and other tall things.
And murdering the main character's parents,
Yeah, thanks, Val. Kate Warner doubles the vote for Watership Down. Quote, I was not prepared for that as a kid, end quote. I agree, Kate. Is anyone? Thanks. Adam Mark was next with, quote, The Brave Little Toaster. The toaster's dream where the evil clown emerges, whispers, run, and chases the toaster is a weird interlude, adds nothing to the story, is never referenced again, and serves no foreshadowing function. It terrified me as a child, end quote. Yeah, you got my vote, Adam, but for different reasons, as we'll see. Thanks. Dave has an interesting insight he shared. Quote, true enough, I can't really think of any that are inappropriate, nor do I understand why any of the films identified here are necessarily inappropriate. Some kids are more sensitive than others, but as I was raised, television was never appropriate for kids, and the silver screen was always acceptable. I was 10 years old when I tried to get into The Exorcist, and it would have worked except the movie was sold out, so the staff were watching for us, end quote. The Exorcist. You heard it here first, not for kids.
Wow. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
That's fair. Yeah, I would agree with that. But
yeah, The Exorcist. Wow. Yeah, well, it does have those cartoon... No, it doesn't. Okay. Weasel Yosef Forsyth typed, quote, Iron Giant. Its ending is sad. There are also German and Russian ones that I vaguely remember that were absolutely terrifying because most German and Russian children's stories involve death, curses from old gods, insanity, or all three. Also, Deadpool. Charles and I went to see that 4 times opening weekend, thanks to my love of Wade. But one of the times a dude brought his 6-year-old son with him. I think he figured it out quick, though.
It's an R-rated movie.
I think he figured it out quick, though. But yeah, who brings their kindergartner to see an R-rated Deadpool movie, end quote. Well, It was about a comic book superhero, right? Oh, thanks, Weasel. Lastly, Henry Clay seconded the vote for The Secret of Nim. Thanks, Henry. Wow, that was a lot of answer.
Yeah, hang on. There are a couple you missed.
How?
They were done. They were responded to me, not to you, on Facebook.
And you didn't. Okay, fine.
I assumed you would have found them if you had done your due diligence.
Did you call me Gilligan?
Yeah, your due Gilligan. Yep.
Well, by all means.
Susan Cassidy also agrees with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I don't know if our spawn have ever seen past the point that the child catcher appears. Up to that point is fine. Past that point, shudder. Huh. Seth Jacobs, a first-time commenter, Poltergeist. Was that actually supposed to be a children's movie?
There's a kid in it.
Yeah. Isher Duarte has another vote for Bambi. Rachel Teller has a vote for Watership Down. I actually received it as a Christmas present as a child. Black Cauldron and the ending of Old Yeller. Ooh, yeah. And Martha Armstrong Gray gives us the Disney contingent, Lion King and Bambi.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for all those extra answers. And I guess now I have to look at Max's Facebook page. So, that was a lot of answers.
Yes, thank you.
And it seems that we're all scarred in one way or another. But what's your scar of choice, Max?
Well, we kind of already know this because we did an episode about this movie. Yellow Submarine scared the living crap out of me when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Some about the Blue Meanies would again, I think that was just me because I've never heard of anyone being at all traumatized by that movie. Other than that, I got to go with Return to Oz. I really like that movie. It's not for children. Dorothy gets electroshock therapy, or is about to get it in the opening 20 minutes. Nothing wrong with the electroshock therapy, but for small children in the early 19th part of the 20th century, yikes!
Yeah, it goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
Because remember, there's Queen Mombi, whose big thing is, well, she takes the heads off people and then just puts them on her own shoulders. And
the Gnome King is pretty scary, too, and the Wheelers.
The Wheelers, I think, are scarier than Gnome King. The Gnome King, all he does is turn people into ornaments, but it's apparently a lot more faithful to two of the books. It's not one book. I think it's Ozma of Oz, and I think it's Return to Oz.
I think The Marvelous Land of Oz. I'm not sure.
But
yes. And of course, what gets me with the Gnome King is when he starts speaking the charm of making. And
that's Excalibur.
It's still Nicole Williamson.
That may be. Well, he was in Columbo too.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, Return to Oz is an obvious one. It's an easy one. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang surprised me that it got one vote, never mind two. I loved that film as a child. I had the record with all the songs, and I wore it out at least once. I had the little corgi car. Yeah, the
child catcher is pretty creepy.
I guess, but he's not. To me, he wasn't scary. He was just creepy. And I saw the film when it came out, so I must have been 4 or 5, and I don't know. The big thing for me is that when Susan said, oh, once they get to the child catcher, well, you've already gone past the intermission. You're almost 2/3 of the way through the film at that point. But whatever. And I just found that interesting. Also, Brave Little Toaster, not so much for the clown. The ending of that film is so depressing.
It is.
It's not that it's sad, it's depressing. It is a film that will make you never want to throw anything out ever again.
I'm surprised it didn't raise a generation of hoarders.
I know. It's kind of a Disney film, but not really. I think it was distributed by, but not made by.
I forget, yeah.
And it's well done, but it's just you sit there and look at that one appliance that's sort of barely hanging on by a thread, and you're like, oh, I should really get rid of that thing. It doesn't work. If you see this movie, you'll be like, I must save it. It's a dishwasher. It doesn't have feelings, but yeah. So, thank you once again. We always love to hear your side of things, so much so that we want to hear more. This week, we're wondering, Orson Welles, yay or nay? This can be as a director, actor, or both. Is he worth all the talk or not? Let us know and we'll give you Bumpy Bucks, the cryptocurrency that never stays out late. And we'll send them to you just as soon as they exist. But for now, we have this. The facts. Budget, $828,000. $1,000. It's $1,000 thing again. I don't know what that kind of money that is. What's $1,000?
I don't know.
Yeah,
What's one of those foreign numbers?
Yeah. Take $2.2 million. So that's pretty good. Though
it is.
Most of the money was made in Europe, not in the U.S.
Huh.
We almost didn't get Janet Leigh. The salary offer was low enough that her agent turned Welles down flat. Welles, thinking ahead, sent a letter to Leigh personally telling her how much he looked forward to working with her. Pissed off, she overrode her agent and signed on.
Good for her.
Mercedes
By the way,
McCain,
isn't it Lee?
Is it Lee or Leigh? I don't know.
I think it's Lee just because Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, I guess it makes sense. It's spelled Leigh, but
yeah.
like Leigh bracket, but whatever.
Yeah.
Mercedes McCambridge is only here because of a lunch date. While eating with Welles, he asked her to be in a scene. She jumped at the chance, even though it meant Orson would be her barber. Truly. He cut her hair himself.
That's what happened to her.
Threw her in a leather jacket and directed her one line, "I want to watch."
Yeah, which is one of the more disturbing lines of the movie.
Yeah. No, really, it's a fat suit. Welles supposedly donned quite the padding and makeup for this role. That's what the man said.
That's what he said, all right.
There are two versions of this film. The original studio cut 1958 version is the one we're all seeing now, but when Welles found out what happened in his absence, he'd gone off to work on his next film before editing was completed, he wrote out directions on exactly how he wanted the film to work. That letter was used in 1998 to make the final or director's cut, and that cut is available, but only on Blu-ray. The film has a very different feel to it, though if you're fans of the French film movements of the 60s, it might seem derivative. Turns out it's the other way around. This premiered at the Brussels World Fair of 1958 and was seen by two very soon-to-be influential directors, Francois Truffaut, as seen in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Jean-Luc Godard, captain of the USS Enterprise D.
Wait, what?
That's true. Welles wanted...
No, it isn't.
Welles wanted to shoot in Tijuana, but the studio said no go. So instead, it was filmed at the then rather run-down Venice, California, except for the apartment scene, all of which is shot on location. And having been to Venice within the last 5 or 6 years, it's not all that run-up yet, anyway.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Marlene Dietrich was there simply because she wanted to work with Welles. Even the studio execs didn't know she was going to be there. As a favor, she agreed to appear for scale. When the studio found out, they decided to plaster her name on the credits, which resulted in them having to pay her a good deal more. So,
oops.
Well done, producers. The dialogue was written, well, originally by Welles, but according to Leigh, he wanted everyone involved. So during the 2-week rehearsal, actors were encouraged to rewrite their own dialogue. I'm not even supposed to be here today. Welles was hired as an actor, not as director. Charleton Heston thought otherwise, which is why he signed on. To keep the ape happy, Welles took over directing chores too.
Damn dirty ape.
Another guest star, Zsa Zsa Gabor, was barely a guest, never mind a star.
Yeah.
She has one line and is on screen for about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Heston admits that his not trying to do any kind of accent for his supposedly Mexican character, we'll get back to that, in this film as being one of his biggest acting mistakes ever. How he pulled this out of a long list. Oh, wait, never mind. Speaking of Heston playing a Mexican, that was Welles' idea. He was originally supposed to be white. There's a scene that contradicts this in, of all places, the movie Ed Wood, where Wood supposedly meets Welles in a bar. Welles is complaining about Heston playing a Mexican and the studio's recutting his movies. This movie is better known as a B movie as it premiered after the top-billed film, The Female Animal.
Oh,
it was a double feature. Yep. Yeah, The Female, you know that film. It's that movie with the guy.
The animal that's female, right?
Right, yes. And this is the last U.S. film directed by Orson Welles. And that is the last bit of trivia we have for this film, unless, Max, you want to shoehorn your way in here with anything you might know?
Nope. I think that pretty much covers it.
Oh, damn.
Well, although I will say, I started to watch, I have a copy of this film. It was a rip from a DVD. I started to watch it, and I see this crawl that says in 1957, and I realized, this is the one they recut.
Oh, you watched the recut version.
No, I didn't. I figured we should watch the same version, so I went and watched it and rented it on a streaming service.
I see. Yeah, see, I wish I had access.
So it does have it. It's out there, and it wasn't just Blu-ray. It was on a DVD.
Was it? Okay. Because when I looked for, maybe it's only available now on Blu-ray, but
maybe that wouldn't surprise me.
I actually did want to see the other cut just in case, because we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But now I can't delay any longer. It's time
movie
for
time.
The plot.
Yep. Deep breath.
Yeah. Charleton Heston plays Vargas, a UN, or is it a Mexican narcotics officer? He and his wife, Janet Leigh, are crossing back over to the U.S. border from Mexico when they witness the assassination of a local building contractor by car bomb. Out of his jurisdiction, Vargas must bend to the will of a rather well-known and shady American cop, one Hank Quinlan, as played by Orson Welles. Quinlan has a long record of catching his man and getting confessions. Odd that most of these criminals are Mexican. So odd indeed.
Ay, Chihuahua.
Vargas thinks there's something fishy going on, not least of which because he's rattling the cages of the local Mexican drug lords. Quinlan's sure he can catch the man and more or less steers the case, though Vargas is allowed to hang around and occasionally contribute. Vargas sends his wife to a motel in Death Valley, or, well, somewhere equally as remote to keep her safe. Seems she's been approached by some of the local bad guys with a message for Vargas, and that message is, beware. They even try to frame her in a bit of adultery that goes nowhere. With her safely out of the way, overseen by twitchy motel keeper Dennis Weaver, she's more than safe. She's less than safe. That local drug lord, he sends his gang of toughs out to keep an eye on Vargas' wife and eventually try and make it look like she's a drug user. Thing is, this isn't just the drug lord's idea. Quinlan is tired of Vargas' interference and decides the best way to shut him up is to frame his wife for drug use, and heck, while he's at it, he can kill off the drug lord with whom he's working and blame it on her as well. Things don't go as planned. Vargas finds out and, enlisting the aid of Quinlan's right-hand man, he tries to tape a confession with a wired mic and remote tape recorder. Quinlan can't face ruin and scandal, so tries one last time to turn the tables on Vargas. There's a shootout. Twice. Guilt is the winner. But on whose side is guilt? Quinlan's or Vargas's? Only we know for sure.
The film. And you, if you've seen the movie.
And Orson Welles and everyone who's in it. And anyone who's actually, Right, so, Touch of Evil, it has quite the cast in it.
Yeah, but first off, I do want to point out, as we see at the beginning, it says it is a Universal International film. If something is universal, doesn't that just automatically make it international?
Yeah.
We have to address this.
No, we don't.
It's the Chihuahua in the room.
Stop saying Chihuahua.
No, I eat Chihuahua.
Thank you. To our Mexican listeners, please excuse Max in this and many other problems. Let's just go right for the neck, shall we?
Yeah, let's.
Charleton Heston.
Oh, boy. Charleton. Now, look, it was bad enough in the Ten Commandments that we're supposed to believe he's Jewish.
Well, maybe the blue eyes were something of a giveaway.
But Mexican?
My first note of the film is, wait, Heston's supposed to be a Mexican? Does Heston ever play a white guy?
Heston, I looked this up, by the way. He is descended from the Scots and the Norwegians with a little Canadian. He's as literally as white as it is possible to get.
Now, wait, Max, I need you to be actually very serious about this.
Okay.
Do you know for a fact, that the lost tribe of Israel didn't end up in Norway?
Well, you got me there. I can't actually... I can't prove that there were not, in fact, Jewish Vikings. I don't know.
But that still has nothing to do with the shoe polish mustache that Charleton Heston is wearing in this film.
What is it with the mustaches in that? Because, Uncle Joe Grande
kind of slow.
has that little... I don't know, John Waters Sharpie mustache.
Yeah.
Never mind. Okay, Charleton Heston, I think, is the most egregious. But what about Uncle Joe? Because Uncle Joe Grande, who is very supposed to be Mexican, is played by Akim Tamiroff.
Well, that's a Mexican name.
Who is Armenian.
I gotta admit, and this is the reason I used Orson Welles as the center part of this week's poll question. What was he thinking?
I don't know. I mean, okay, Charleton you can argue that maybe the cutting or the editing of this could have been better, but the casting is so odd.
Well, and Charleton Heston deciding not to do any kind of Hispanic accent, and in some ways, I do applaud him for this. Although,
because imagine what would have happened. Imagine Charleton Heston trying to do a Mexican accent.
It's Speedy Gonzales. We know where it's going. That's where it's going. But here's the thing. The only reason we know he's Mexican is because they keep saying Vargas, Vargas, Vargas. And otherwise, we would never assume for an instant that Charleton Heston has ever been to Mexico.
Yeah,
even when they're in Venice, I don't think he's that near to Mexico.
and Orson Welles or Captain Quinlan always pointing, this foreigner, this Mexican, this foreigner.
Well, and
by the way, have I mentioned I'm racist?
Let's look at those two together. So on one hand, we have Charleton Heston not being Mexican, but deciding that I know instead of doing an accent, I'll just mumble a lot. And I couldn't understand him half the time he was talking.
Yeah, he's very hard to understand. Not to mention the fact you don't put Charleton Heston next to Orson frigging Welles and have them act. Because, all right, I mean, this is giving away some of my answer to next week's poll question, but Orson Welles can act. Charleton Heston cannot.
I never knew where he was coming from. Like, I don't, and that's sort of an overall note I had, was that we have there's no real depth to much of the performances here. Orson Welles is probably the best of the bunch.
Yeah.
Janet Leigh acts very scared, but her character's an idiot. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She is a moron.
It's like, what is it, what's his name?
Poncho?
The one she calls Poncho.
That's his character name. They don't give him another name.
Yeah, isn't that nice, though? Yeah, because even the uncle calls her on that. Why do you call him Poncho? That's for laughs. Ouch!
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, hi, I'm Poncho. This thug in a leather jacket says, here, you got to come with me. She goes, okay!
No, he doesn't even say it because he supposedly doesn't speak English. He hands her a note, and she's like, I'll go with you.
You seem trustworthy. I'll go with you.
I just witnessed a car bombing, and my husband is the DA trying to shut down the local crime lord. I'll wander off without telling anybody, no problem.
Yeah. And, of course, when she goes to the motel and she's the only guest, Janet, come on, you know what happens to you when you go to a motel and you're the only guest. Well, at least she didn't take a shower.
She won't know this for another 2 years, unfortunately. But her character is an idiot. I just don't understand any of the motivation for any of the things. I'll sit out the movie over here in Death Valley while you guys get on with things. And then
Vargas is an idiot and also arguably the worst husband on earth.
Yeah. I mean, I'll protect my wife by having somebody I don't really know. Oh, I guess he's a cop, so he's trustworthy. Although he works for that guy. I'm sorry, did you just roll him out of an alley? He's looking kind of rough around the edges there, which is fine. Except here's the problem I have with his character. So Captain Hank Quinlan is supposedly a very well-respected policeman who's caught tons of criminals and is irrefutable and
brilliant
impeachable.
Detective, yeah.
And he honestly looks like the day after. I don't know what kind of time he had, good or bad, but it's a day after something. He does.
He looked like he just came off a week-long bender. And he looks that way all the time.
He literally looks like he had, the day before, he was a famous Shakespearean actor, woke up and somebody told him he was Tor Johnson.
And the thing is, we're supposed to believe he's been on the wagon. He's been sober for 12 years.
Yeah.
I'm looking at him going, no, he hasn't.
No, it's just, I don't, the only way I could understand his character, because we find, spoiler, if you haven't seen this film, it's over 60 years old. It's a classic. He's supposedly, the evidence he's given is, you can't even think about questioning it. Everything is locked and tied tight. So technically he's still at the top of his career. His wife died a number of years ago. We're not exactly sure how.
We know how. She says she was strangled by somebody in a factory. He assumed it was this, quote, half-breed.
Right.
Very nice.
In other words, it was Cher.
Yeah, well, that is all she ever heard.
Yeah, although that was a totally
so she was murdered by someone.
Right, and so
she hanged herself to get away from him.
And of course, that I can understand why that would send him into a downward spiral, except that apparently work is not part of that because up till now, nobody ever questions him.
Yeah.
And when Charleton Heston is clever,
yeah.
I can't finish that sentence.
No, you can't. How did this guy have a job? I don't
know. And they, half the time they say he's appointed by the UN, and then the other half of the time they say he's from Mexico.
It's not clear who he works for or what he does. He's part of a narcotics task force.
Yeah, they're trying to clear up Mexico. Spoiler, doesn't work.
Nope.
So, yeah, whatever. And then, of course, the stupidity doesn't end with the Heston-Leigh duet, because later on we see Orson Welles decides that he wants to, he's been working suddenly with Uncle, what's his name? Uncle Grandy.
Uncle Joe.
Who's gotten him drunk, which I guess convinces him to work with the enemy. And he decides that he's going to get rid of Uncle Grandy, and he's going to make it look like Janet Leigh's overpowered him and strangled him.
At the same time, Janet Leigh is supposed to be in a drug-induced stupor, but still is strong enough and competent enough to strangle him from behind, leave him draped over her bed, and then collapse on the bed.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not? Yeah. Wow. Criminal mastermind here.
And the thing that's supposed to be the I guess, the fulcrum to get her to do this is initially the evil of reefer. And then, supposedly, there's heroin involved. But, of course, they don't actually inject her with heroin. And it is equally simple to prove that she wasn't injected with heroin. And she's passed out.
How they figure... It's like... the cop is saying... They didn't even use heroin. It was just that truth serum stuff.
Yeah, sodium pentothal.
They shot her full of sodium pentothal. Okay, first of all, that's dangerous as hell.
Right.
If you get the dosage on sodium pentothal wrong, it is not a good thing.
No.
So it's not like, oh, she's fine now. No, I bet she isn't.
Well, and she's at the motel with Twitchy Weaver there. McLeod!
What was with McLeod there?
I hate to say this, but he's one of the few characters that actually had any depth to him. Because he was obviously very backwards, really interested in Janet Leigh, which, to be fair, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, seriously.
But also obviously had no idea what to do. Like, he was afraid of even contemplating doing anything with her. So there was you could see the thought put into his character.
Yeah,
I think he was a little cartoonish, but...
A little, you get the idea that this guy was someone's special needs cousin who needed a job.
Right. And let's face it, the hotel, which we don't even see a road in front of, probably isn't that busy most of the time.
Well, she is the only customer.
Yeah, and it's like, why did you pick there? Okay, whatever. But then this group of toughs show up, and we know they're toughs because A, they're all wearing black leather motorcycle jackets, and B, they're on the reefer, which the effects of which range from disinterest to pretty much reefer madness. Hey, play faster.
Yeah, this is, you got to remember, this is 1958. This is peak reefer madness nonsense.
Yeah.
When nobody really knew what it was. They just knew it was evil and associated with ethnic people.
Yeah. And as we all now know, marijuana, Mary Jane, if you will, all it does is make you think Scooby-Doo is the funniest thing in the world.
And, well, it also makes you eat an awful lot of snacks.
Having tried it, I admitted that.
Oh, no, it's legal now, remember?
I will say, it does give me the munchies something awful. I will just sit there and chow down and laugh at Scooby-Doo, which is really all I want.
This is one of those movies, by the way, I know it's a tangent, but it did not do any real research in the drug culture, because at one point, someone says, you know what marijuana is? Yeah, I think yes. You know what Mary Jane is? Yes, it's the same thing. It's slang for marijuana. What is wrong with you?
Oh, who knows?
That was pretty... We're talking about the actors.
Yep.
What is Marlene Dietrich doing?
A gypsy?
Are you sure?
No.
And am I crazy, or was she in brown face? Because Marlene Dietrich is very pale, and she looks rather darker skinned in this movie than I've ever seen.
Well, I mean, let's face it, this film could easily have shown up in our Whitewashing series. See our entire series on Whitewashing.
Yeah. And she's Marlene Dietrich. First off, in this movie, she's 57.
Right.
And I'm still looking at her going, damn. She is still gorgeous.
Well, and everyone wanted to work with Orson Welles because he was, as far as actors were concerned, Hollywood didn't feel this way, but as far as actors were concerned, he was an actor's director. Yeah. And to be fair, apparently all the rehearsals they did were not common for films. A lot of times you'd get like a day or two, and they did 2 weeks before they started filming anything.
Wow.
And he does let them rewrite their dialogue. And when I can understand it, I don't generally have a problem with the dialogue. And if it was an actor that's good enough, Charleton Heston isn't, I think that you can trust them to add something to their character.
Yeah.
But, I can't tell because I didn't find the dialogue outstanding one way or the other. It was fine. We have a couple of, we have literally Zsa Zsa Gabor. You can blink and miss her.
I don't even count that as a performance. She's more like a, hi. It's like barely a cameo.
She steps in and goes, Oliver! And that's it. She's gone.
That is not what she says, but I don't even remember what she says, except I think she said, no, I didn't even know him. And we're done.
Or
By
she
the
said,
way,
the stores!
Since when are there guest stars in movies? That's how it is in the credits.
Yeah.
Guest starring Marlene Dietrich and Zsa Zsa Gabor. And I thought, by the way, that was really incredibly generous of them to put Zsa Zsa next to Marlena's name. I mean, wow.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. And there's other people in here that, are of, middling parts.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Our old buddy Joseph Cotton is the coroner.
Yeah, and I didn't even notice him. Like, he went right over my head. I know
went right past.
Yeah, it's whatever. We might as well also talk about this film is fairly this film is very racist. Not only do we have whitewashing going on, potential brown face going on, but of course every person of Mexican heritage in this film is bad.
Yeah.
There's no
or corrupt or sleazy.
Yeah. And in the book, except for Charleton Heston, who's not Mexican, in the book everything was reversed. So it was actually Vargas wasn't Mexican. He was white, and his wife was Mexican, which might have made more sense. Who can tell? I don't know.
Yeah.
But we've got a big racism problem here, and I suppose you could say it's the 50s, but I don't want to excuse it. Especially when the half-breed comment shows up, because that's often used against Native Americans, and we certainly don't need any of that crap. We certainly don't need it against people of Hispanic nationality. It's just like, whatever. If they had used it only as a means to show the racism of the characters in the film, I might have understood it, but they don't even do that.
They do show, like, Quinlan it's very clear he doesn't like Mexicans, he doesn't like ethnic people at all.
But I think he doesn't like anybody who encroaches on his territory, so he's using it as an excuse. But, because of course...
And the fact he keeps calling Sanchez boy.
Yeah, which is a diminutive for anybody who's not white.
Yeah.
Which is obnoxious. And I will say there is one scene where the toughs, which includes a bunch of, I'm going to go out and say it, I think they're meant to be biker lesbians, because that's what, they show up to take down Janet Leigh, who weighs, I'm going to guess, 80 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah, and it still takes about 6 of them.
That scene's really scary.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
Apparently that wasn't acting. Apparently Janet Leigh was terrified while they were shooting that scene. But you don't know what's going to happen. It looks quite honestly like it's going to end up being a lot worse than it is. And if it wasn't the 50s, it probably would have been. And I don't mean by what they show. I mean what actually happens. Because it turns out all that happens is they grab her and drug her. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. But you think they're going to assault her, and you think it's going to get really horrible.
Yes. And so they take the only major female character in the film and use her as part of rape. Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Orson.
As a plot point, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, actually, let's get to the cinematography, because that's part of what we do in this show. This was a really interestingly shot film. The opening shot is 3.5 minutes of one take, and it involves not only a bunch of walking, but driving and a camera crane on a truck. And it's actually really cool. The opening, and this is one of those classic scenes, and apparently they did it so many times, they had literally one more chance before the sun came up because one guy, the border guard, kept blowing his lines. And apparently Orson said to the guy, I don't care what you say. Do not say, I'm sorry, Mr. Wells, we'll dub you in later. And that's the take they used. And it's a really cool opening scene. Orson really likes close-ups in this film.
Yeah.
And
he likes them in a lot of them.
But this one especially. If you like to count pores, this is your film.
Yeah, there's a lot of camera right in people's faces.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's not doing himself any favors.
I kind of admired that because he wasn't stupid. He must have known how bad he would look on camera.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing that on purpose. He's showing how dissipated and ruined Quinlan is. And I think that works really well. Quinlan visually is the most interesting character. He's the most interesting to look at. He's horrible to look at, but he's fascinating.
When you're looking at Heston, you're staring at that mustache, waiting for it to come off.
Oh, dude, did you like just drink a lot of molasses or something? Is that what's on your upper lip?
You shouldn't chew on those cheap pens.
So unconvincing. And he must have gotten it in his eyebrows, too, apparently.
Yeah, and his hair. It's just, And he's all slicked back because otherwise the hair dye would look even worse than it already does. But when I looked at the way the film was shot, the close-ups, the cutting and stuff, and I know some of this was done against Welles' wishes, I can totally see where that French, I don't remember what it was called, the French New Wave or whatever it was called of the 60s.
Yeah, French New Wave.
And cinema verite and all that stuff, I can totally see where this was coming from. And I, of course, thought it was European inspired, and it turns out it was the other way around. So I actually like the way it's shot. I like that it's shot mostly at night, and the fact that he shot almost everything in downtown Venice, and it is sadly a kind of rundown looking place. Apparently it doesn't look all that much different today.
Ouch.
But I think that really works, and the city, town, whatever, is very much a character. Now, of course, it's made to look a little worse because it's supposed to be Tijuana, which is in Mexico, but yeah, whatever.
Well, they emphasize it's a border town.
Right.
And he's not kidding. Border towns can be very rough.
Yeah, but who run Border Town?
Well, that's obviously Master Blaster. But
what did you think of the cinematography? And
I thought a lot of it looked really cool, especially the night shots. That's hard to do without either being impossible to see what's going on or dull.
Yeah.
I gotta say, he made the town look kind of like a backlot to me.
Isn't that weird? It's a real town, but
it's a real place.
Fake.
I knew that, but it looks like if you pushed one of the buildings, it would fall over.
Or if the camera can see more than about a block, it's not there.
And some of the close-ups, like the way he lingers, or the way the camera lingers on Marlene Dietrich's face, is amazing. Because it's Marlene Dietrich, and she's got those eyes, and she knows how to just do so much with just her face, because she started in the silent films.
Well, she's got Bette Davis eyes.
She has Marlene Dietrich eyes, which are even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, that a lot of the close-ups aren't entirely in focus.
Yeah, that was an odd part.
Yeah, I don't think that was a choice. I think it just wasn't. And it made me really wish they were. Unless we're supposed to be looking through the bleary eyes of Quinlan?
I'm not sure. It was. I thought it might have been the print, but
yeah. There's also something about the performances, and we sort of moved on from acting, but there's a lot of overdubbing in this film.
Yeah,
and it really hurts the performances.
It's very apparent.
Yeah, and it was done a lot. It's just a lot of times you don't know it's going on. In this film, sadly, it's not one of those films.
Yeah, you can tell.
And it adds to a kind of overall slipshod feel to the film, which is one of the reasons I really would like to see the other cut, because I can't tell how much of that feeling is from the editing.
Some of the I gotta say, I don't know if it's the editing or if it is the performance. Janet Leigh, who is usually pretty good, her character shifts back and forth a lot. In the beginning, she's got this kind of tough, wise ass attitude. Yeah. She's not afraid of Uncle Joe Grande, even though he's basically kidnapped her.
Well, except when she tells him she is.
Yeah, except you don't entirely believe it
until later.
Yeah, she's just she's mouthing off, and she's not like cowering, and then she just falls apart, and then it's mostly just Mike.
Well, never mind her decisions like, well, I can't get in touch with him. I guess I'll just stay here.
Yeah, why doesn't she try to leave? Didn't she? Well, of course, she doesn't seem to have a car, and she is in the middle of nothing.
But she didn't even try to leave the room.
Yeah, she didn't try to get out. She didn't try to go out a window. Well, no, at one point she does. And
yeah. Well,
somebody's standing there.
Yeah. I think it's one of the motorcycle lesbians.
Yeah, why she stayed there so long, I don't know.
Well, she doesn't do anything. She's just literally there to try and get in touch with her husband, or so her husband can try and get in touch with her. Like, her character just becomes, until she's being used as a plot.
Yeah, she goes into damsel in distress mode, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, because the character was much more interesting when she was, snarling at people, or, talking back to her husband, or being something other than a 50s housewife.
Yeah. And this was a adaptation. It was a novel called Badge of Evil. They changed the title, which initially Orson didn't like, but apparently it turned out being one of his favorite titles later on. He got used to it, I guess. And apparently the plot, from what I looked at, bears a resemblance to this, but Orson rewrote most of the plot, and I can't. The old plot is actually fairly convoluted as well, and I can't tell if it would have been better in its original form, but it more or less works out the same way. I have to admit, when they are doing this final scene and there's the radio microphone that's planted on the now it was bad cop, now good cop.
Yeah.
I'm just like, they had this then? Okay. And I didn't even realize, because they don't show you.
Yeah.
That there's a tape recorder built in. So I'm sitting there going, why are you bothering? It's just going to be your word against his, and they don't tell you there's a tape recorder, and I had a note about that, and then I had to cross it off because they finally show you, oh no, in this giant valise that he's carrying around with an antenna sticking out of it, oh, there is a tape recorder. Okay, so now we know the scene actually makes sense, because up to that point, it doesn't. I gotta say, though, he has to be within so many feet. This is worse than Bluetooth.
Yeah.
But the partner cop to Quinlan is walking with him and not at all suspiciously going, hey, so why did we fake all that evidence all those years?
Yes, if you get the feeling, partly Quinlan is very drunk.
Right.
And I think that's why it takes him so long to suddenly figure out what's going on.
But they're walking, they walk over this bridge, over this canal, and apparently Charleton Heston Vargas has to keep following, and he decides the best way to do this is to go into the water. So we're all sitting there waiting for that thing to short out, or him to drop it, or
Yep, that's
whatever.
what I was waiting for. And also, I'm thinking, Vargas, have you ever used one of these before? Because it doesn't occur to him to turn down the speaker, because Quinlan notices everything he's saying is echoing under the bridge a half second later.
Right. So, yeah, Vargas proves that they married for stupid. Apparently that's what drew them together was, hey, is your IQ under 100, so's mine. Let's get hitched.
Pretty much.
And then we get a shootout, sort of, which is fine. I mean, he shoots his buddy cop because there's going to be a problem. And then he has taken Vargas's gun, which Vargas put in his briefcase and left with his wife for reasons that whatever. I
always wondered, if she knew about the gun, why wasn't she grabbing that and shooting these guys who were attacking her?
She doesn't see him put it in the valise.
Oh, okay.
We see it. They make sure that we see where the gun goes, but she doesn't know it's there unless he regularly puts it there, but there's no reason for us to assume that.
Yeah.
So who knows? But then the gun gets pulled out, and now Quinlan is like, well, I'm going to make it look like it was self-defense. And it's like, Vargas isn't armed. And there's a dead guy up there. How is this going to... I don't know.
And you've got the dead guy's blood all over you.
There's that, too. And then he tries to wash it off in the filthy canal. And, and then there's another shootout because it turns out that the bad cop's not dead, and he shoots. His last move, somehow, is it's a very Hollywood, I have one drop of blood left. Bam! And then he collapses.
Now I'm dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the police show up, and Orson floats off into sunset.
Ouch.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And there's that weird throwaway line about, one of the plot points is the assassination attempt, which we kind of forget about.
Yeah.
They've railroaded
and we don't even know who it is.
Well, he was a contractor. He's a builder. That's all we know. We don't know why he was killed. We don't know anything about him.
No.
Yeah, and they've been accusing this guy Sanchez, who was sleeping with the guy's daughter. And the whole thing seems to be, oh, this is another example of Quinlan's racism. He just picked this guy because he's Mexican and he's sleeping with a white woman. And then the district attorney or whoever, lawyer man, at the end says, and you know what? It turned out he was guilty after all because he confessed.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, people, if using those old techniques, people will confess to just about anything under interrogation. That confessions can be recanted and don't really mean anything anymore. And second, that sort of undercuts that whole thing.
Yeah. I was going to leave that for the wrap-up, but it was sort of like, well, you're basically saying he's a crooked cop because he frames the wrong person and innocent people go to jail, except this time when he was right.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that even though he planted evidence in the past, he was right those times? We don't even know. So, and we don't even really know if Sanchez is guilty. We can't tell. You see that somebody put a bomb in this guy's car in the opening scene of the film. And again, the opening scene is very cool, and you're waiting for the bomb to go off and who's it going to take out with it. And I think it's actually very cool. Yeah. But it could be anybody except Quinlan. It can't be Quinlan. No way.
The bomb wasn't large enough.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't understand that part. But hey, we've got a couple of talking points we can talk about.
Sure.
Would this movie have been better or even work in color?
I'm not sure. This is one of the few ones we've seen where I'm not sure. I don't think it would have worked as well in color, especially with all the close-ups. People would have looked even worse.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I'm going to go with no. I think that this is meant to be a very noir film. I think that the grittiness is really magnified by the texture and you could have done a close-up of Orson Welles and showed splotchy skin too, but that might have felt like it was overdoing it. I think downtown Venice or San Robles looks plenty terrible on its own. I don't know that the color would have added anything. Most of the film, not all of it, but half the film takes place at night, and I think that is shot to its best. I think that it looks really, really nice black and white, not so much gray. Great use of shadow at night. During the day, it's another black and white film. I don't think there's anything particularly interesting during the day, but that's to be understood. So I would say no. I don't think this film would work as well in color. And we haven't asked this of other films, but this one, I think, because we're both maybe it's probably a surprise how we feel about this film, but as it's somewhat problematic, what do you think about a remake? Do you think this film could be remade and work?
I really don't think so, not unless you made massive revisions to the script.
Well, removing the racism would be my first choice.
That would be part of it, yeah. Casting actual Mexicans to play Mexicans.
Well, does it even have... I guess there has to be a... Well, does it have to be a border?
It helps. Why couldn't it just... Because it is... part of it is the tension between jurisdictions and the fact that it really is an international incident. I think
Let's
that
do
does
it with
matter.
Canada.
Okay. Hey, you got no jurisdiction here, eh?
Yeah, get out! I totally do, eh?
No way, Ozer. Sorry, Vince.
Yeah, the evils of Canada.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Oh yeah, they blew that guy up. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
To me, this film feels like a film that is lucky it narrowly escaped some sort of 80s remake. You know what I mean? Like, let's take a classic film that we can do better.
They have done that an awful lot.
Yeah, like It's a Wonderful Life. With, who was it? Wayne Rogers and Marlene...
Marlo Thomas.
Marlo Thomas.
Yes, that was one of many.
Yeah, so I think you could get the right director, and you know who I think could do it?
Who?
Eggers from last week. I bet he could make a really interesting version of this film.
The guy who did Lighthouse.
Yep.
That would be interesting to see. I'd probably want to shoot myself after it, but that would be interesting to see.
Well, of course, the cast would be narrowed down to 2 people.
Yeah, that's it. And just be Vargas and Quinlan the whole time.
They just try to spend the whole time proving each other one's guilty.
Yeah, yep.
That's not fair. I've only seen one of his films.
And masturbating, but yeah.
But somebody like that, I think, could do a really interesting job. There's somebody else who did L.A. Confidential.
Oh, I do not remember.
Is that David Lynch?
I don't think so. There wasn't enough dancing.
But David Lynch could do a very interesting version of this film.
Yeah, that would be another one I would probably admire and never want to see again as long as I lived.
So I would say, for that question, which I just pulled out of nowhere, I would say possibly. If you had the right director, I think you could. I think there are directors out there. Now, someday I'd really love to see do it because I would have no idea what to expect would be, and of course, now that I want to say his name, I've forgotten it, Budapest Hotel.
Oh, Wes Anderson?
Wes Anderson's Touch of Evil. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Wes Anderson doesn't do film noir.
But he could. It would be quirky and fun.
Everyone would be incredibly quirky. Yeah, Quinlan would be played by, Tilda Swinton. And
wouldn't you see that?
Yes, I would. Vargas would be, Bill Murray.
Oh,
Bob Balaban would be in there somewhere.
As long as Bill Murray would play Quinlan.
Oh, yes, okay, yeah, he would play Quinlan. Yeah,
Ethan Hawke could play Marcus.
Or Adrian Brody. Yeah.
See, it works fine.
Oh, yeah.
But we should probably
Mr. Anderson, if you're out there, you're welcome.
But we should probably get to that point where we wrap up this little show.
The finish.
So, Max, when was the first time you saw Touch of Evil? Where did the doll touch you?
I'll show you on the doll, yeah. That shampoo with that little touch of evil. I saw it in a movie marathon. I saw it on VHS, probably in the 80s or 90s.
Yeah? Do you remember what you thought of it then?
I remember, mostly I was just awestruck by seeing Marlene Dietrich and Orson Welles together.
Yeah.
But I remember being kind of confused and not remembering what happened.
Well, to be fair, it was at a marathon, so if it was late at night,
a lot of them do get blurry. What about you?
Well, wait. Have you seen it since then?
Nope, that was the last time.
Until yesterday.
Until yesterday. Yep.
And what do you think of it now?
I don't know. It's very uneven. There are parts I really like. I wish the whole movie had been Orson Welles and Marlene Dietrich because their scenes together are so cool. Just they've got this whole history. Mm-hmm. Even he says, I used to come around here a lot, or I used to like, the chili or what have you, but there's more to it. It's not just like, this is where he would come to get drunk and have sex. And the way she looks at him with this both contempt, sorrow, and pity, and some affection, it's like, okay, what did he do to make her feel that way about him? How did he make her like him at all? Because the version we see is completely unlikable.
Yes.
But a lot of the rest of it, it's like, this is really confusing. And I'm sorry, Charleton Heston, to me, always, never mind that he should not have been cast as a Mexican, Charleton Heston always looks like he has not removed his bowels in 6 months. He looks so constipated and everything. He has done one performance that I thought was impressive, and it's in one scene, and that is in Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, when he plays the leader of the traveling players, and he does the Hecuba monologue, and he nails it, and he looks relaxed. And all I can figure is beforehand, Branagh slipped him about 2 pounds of X-Lax. That's the only thing I can figure. Or he had jaw unclenching surgery.
I was going to ask you if you'd ever seen Heston in a performance you liked. The only performance I know of Heston's that I like is the opening narration to Hercules.
Yeah, that one's not bad. And he's okay in Wayne's World. Actually, is it Wayne's World or Wayne's World 2?
Must be 2. When
Wayne pulls into a gas station to ask directions, and the clerk does this really bad performance, and he looks at the camera and goes, sorry, can we get a better actor? I know this is a small part, and they take the old guy out and they bring in Charleton Heston.
Oh.
And he does okay.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy his performance in Ten Commandments because it is one of my favorite comedy films ever.
It's like, yes, more scenery to chew on. Like, and Yul Brynner is there going, no, that is my scenery to chew on.
It's just everybody in that film. It's like, okay, now to be fair, what is his name? Edward G. Robinson. is Jewish.
Yes.
But he's not generally, that's not the kind of part you expect to see.
Yeah, I'm going to take over from this Moses guy, see? Yeah. This Moses guy's a mug, see?
Moses. Except for the fact that it's 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
I used to, and I'm not a religious person, and I used to watch that film because it just makes me laugh. It is, and to be fair, a confused young man that I was, there was something about Yul Brynner that really,
walking around without a shirt, yeah.
So your final tally on this film is?
If you're a completist, if you're an Orson Welles fan, if you're a big fan of film noir, I would see it. I find it very confusing. I don't think it hangs together terribly well, and I think a couple of the performances kind of knock the legs out from under it. I think Welles does a really good job. I really think Quinlan's a fascinating character, but too much is happening, and it happens too fast. This is all happening like over a day and a half, I think.
Yeah. It almost feels like we're watching it in real time, honestly.
Yeah, kind of. What about you? Have you ever seen this?
No, I have not.
This was your first time?
Well, and here's the weird thing. As much as I love movies and actually respect Orson Welles, before this, I had seen one Orson Welles film. I had seen Citizen Kane, and that's it.
Okay.
Like, I've never seen Magnificent Ambersons. I've never seen this. I've never seen Othello. Is that what? Yeah, I never saw his version of Othello.
Yep.
And I was looking forward to it because it's like, hey, it's an Orson Welles film. And I, like yourself, was confused. It actually feels, and again, I'd like to see that other cut, but it feels choppy, but not. Yeah. Part of it's the direction. You can tell these weird close-up to close-up, and then these pullbacks and these long shots, and you never really know where you are because you go inside and you suddenly forget where you are. Like
what building are we in now? Are we in the hotel? Are we in a bar? What?
And why is Janet Leigh 50 miles out of town? Like, I don't understand why. That makes no sense to me.
The whole sequence with Janet Leigh and the bikers. That's when you said this was a B movie.
Yeah,
that's when it really feels like it. It feels like one of those juvenile delinquency movies.
Blackboard Jungle.
Yeah, the violent years.
Look at them run just like rabbits. Look at them shoot just like professional marksmen.
Yep. It felt a lot. It felt less like an Orson Welles movie and more like one of those. It's like, okay, where's Mamie Van Doren? She should be showing up about now.
Both of her. Yeah. I actually do like the style. I just don't think it would, and this is going to be weird me saying this, I don't think it was used very well. Some of the cinematography, that opening shot, for example, is a great way to open the film. It draws you in. Oh, we see a bomb planted. What's going to happen? We're watching it. They don't cut away. This is interesting. Okay, cool. The characters just don't make any sense. Janet Leigh's character, tough except when she's not. Brilliant except when she's stupid. Charleton Heston, Mexican except he's not. Never that bright. The motivations don't make any sense. Quinlan, Orson Welles, when he staggers into a scene, takes over the scene. Let's just face it. And to be fair, most of the people except for Dietrich can't really stand up to the presence that is Welles.
He really dominates wherever he is except with her.
And he doesn't speak clearly all the time either. And he runs over other people's lines because that's part of his style, which, okay.
Yeah, it felt very Robert Altman.
It did. I would say I'm in total agreement with you. As a completist, if somebody wants to see what all the hubbub's about, then you might want to take a look at Touch of Evil. I would recommend, if you have access to the 1998 cut, so supposed director's cut, because we didn't get to see that, take a look at that and see what you feel based on that one, supposedly that's being fairer to the film. But not my favorite black and white movie ever, and certainly not my favorite Orson Welles film.
I do have to say there are two lines in there I liked, and one is written on a sign. When Vargas is using a phone in this store where the storekeeper is blind, nothing's really ever made. There's a sign behind him that says, if you are mean enough to steal from the blind, help yourself.
Yeah.
Like, all right, that's clever.
Yeah.
And the other line I like is Vargas's line. It's a throwaway, but it's painfully apt, especially, and even today, when Quinlan is yelling at him that, why do you want to make my job harder? He says, a policeman's job is only easy in a police state. Like, wow, 60-odd years later, and that still is something a lot of police people might want to hear.
Yeah, see, I had two quotes from the film that I made note of. One of was, you should lay off those candy bars.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one was the ending quote, and it was by Marlene Dietrich's character, and she said, he was some kind of man. Really? Again, like Max said, I'd love to know how, because the whole film is taking him down.
We don't see that. Yeah, we have people tell us that, but we don't see it.
Yeah. So I'm going to say two, basically no votes.
Yeah.
Unless you're, film history / Orson Welles.
Yeah, two sort of, maybe could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, if you are going to watch it, try and find the 1998 director's cut, because it may be better. We don't know, but we do have that.
That
question.
Poll question. Tell us what it is, won't you?
Well, it's directly related, because this week we would like to know, Orson Welles, yay or nay? When all the votes come in, when all the evidence has been looked at, do you approve of Orson Welles as a director or an actor or both, or not so much? And you should let us know the usual ways. Hey, email us directly, and that's us at maxmikemovies.com. You can go to our website, maxmikemovies.com, leave a comment, give us an idea for a show, give us an idea for a poll question. Max got out of that one last week. You could also just say whether you agree with this or don't agree with this. Either way, we love to hear from you, and occasionally our listeners actually talk to each other, which is even cooler.
Yeah.
You can find us on the social media, meaning Facebook, where we are, of course, Max Mike Movies. And, of course, if you have a podcast app of your choice, we're probably there as, Max Mike Movies.
Oh, yeah, and if you found something other than Twitter and you think we should be out there, let us know, would you?
Yeah, where do you hang out? We'd love to come bother you wherever that is.
Yeah.
But we still got 2 films to go, and the next one's your choice, Max. Max, what are we going to watch? I hope it's something nice and gritty and dark and has lots of masturbation in it.
No! This has been such a grim, dark series.
Are you surprised?
We're going to do black and white, but we're going to do something funny. It's funny!
Yeah?
Yep. We're going to do Some Like It Hot with Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe.
So are we going to finally answer the question, who some is? I want to know who some is.
I hope so. I think that's, who are the some that like it hot? And what do the others like if they don't like it hot? They like it cold. They like it lukewarm. They like it
Buffy
searing.
And
Yeah, could be. We'll ask Buffy and Hildegard.
So next week, join us where we find out who the some is in Some Like It Hot.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.